The brightly lit mall was full of beautiful things, but Tu Na only stopped at one glass display. She reached out, almost holding her breath, to touch the soft, flowing silk of an emerald green dress. But as the delicate fabric slid across her fingers, a quiet, terrible sound broke the spell. Snag. The fine threads caught on the deep, cracked calluses of her palm. She froze. Her eyes immediately dropped to the small white price tag dangling from the sleeve. In her mind, the numbers didn't translate to money. They translated to survival. "That's 2 tons of fertilizer," she calculated silently. "That's 3 months of feed for the chickens." As if she had just been caught committing a crime, she jerked her hand back, shoving it deep into the pocket of her faded, sun-bleached jacket. She looked away, her shoulders instantly hunching inward as she stepped back into the aisle. Welcome back to our family. If you've ever built a life from the dirt up, you know that the hardest habits to break aren't the physical ones. They are the invisible rules you carve into your own mind just to survive. Today was supposed to be different. Alex had driven them 2 hours into the city for a rare day off. But as he watched his wife shrink away from a simple dress, he realized a quiet tragedy was unfolding. What happens when the woman who sacrificed everything to build your home completely forgets how to exist outside of it? Just a few hours earlier, their morning had begun like any other in Cam Than. The quiet rhythm of the bamboo broom sweeping the yard, the comforting smell of wood smoke curling from the outdoor kitchen, and little Henry sitting on the porch, sleepily eating his morning porridge. Out there, in the mud and the morning dew, Tu Na was a force of nature. She could wrestle a stuck water pump, harvest rows of heavy vegetables before dawn, and manage a household with quiet, unyielding strength. Her rubber boots and oversized, paint-stained shirts were her daily armor. But here, under the sterile, unforgiving halogen lights of the city mall, that armor just felt incredibly heavy. The air conditioning was cool and silent, a stark contrast to the humid, cicada-loud afternoons of the farm. Alex stood a few paces behind her, holding Henry's small hand. He noticed how she kept her head down, actively avoiding the polished glass counters and the glittering displays. The friction between that beautiful silk and her work-worn skin wasn't just a physical snag, it was a brutal reminder of the boundary she had drawn around herself. A boundary that silently declared, "Beautiful things belong to other people. I am just the worker. I am just the mother." The pressure in Alex's chest tightened as they continued walking down the wide, spotless corridor. He had planned this trip for weeks. The farm was finally stable, the harvest had been kind to them, and for the first time in 5 long years, there was a little extra tucked away. He wanted nothing more than to see his wife shed the heavy weight of their struggle, if only for an afternoon. Spotting a brightly lit women's boutique, he gently nudged her shoulder, softly suggesting she go inside to look around. Just to see. Tu Na's reaction was immediate, defensive and entirely physical. She stiffened, planting her worn sneakers firmly against the polished tile floor. "No, no," she muttered quickly, her eyes darting nervously toward a pristine mannequin in the window. "I don't need anything. My old coats are perfectly fine. The mud at home would just ruin these anyway. It's a waste." Before Alex could protest, she reached out and grabbed Henry's other hand, using their small son as an instant shield against her own vulnerability. "Let's go look at the toy aisle for Henry," she insisted, her voice suddenly artificially bright, masking her deep discomfort. "Henry wants to see the big trucks, right?" Little Henry, oblivious to the heavy emotional current flowing above his head, cheered and immediately began tugging them forward, his small sandals squeaking against the floor. Alex let himself be pulled along, but his quiet observation didn't stop. As they crossed the threshold into the chaotic, neon-colored children's section, he watched his wife's posture physically transform. The rigid tension melted from her neck and shoulders. She crouched down comfortably in the narrow aisles, pointing out plastic excavators and wooden building blocks. When Henry picked up a shiny red fire truck, she eagerly checked the price and smiled. She would spend on him without a second thought. Here, in the realm of motherhood and duty, Tu Na was completely safe. She was allowed to exist here because her focus was entirely on someone else. But as Alex watched her carefully adjust Henry's collar, a profound sadness washed over him. He realized that the relentless frugality that had saved them during their hardest years had slowly mutated into an invisible cage. Tu Na had spent so many grueling seasons pouring every ounce of her energy into the soil, the house, and their child, that she had systematically erased her own needs. She hadn't just forgotten how to treat herself, she had convinced herself that she no longer deserved it. After half an hour in the children's section, Henry was proudly clutching a plastic dump truck, his energy finally beginning to fade. Alex gently guided his family back out into the main concourse to find a place to rest. The mall here was wider, lined with towering floor-to-ceiling mirrors that wrapped around the massive structural pillars. The lighting was impossibly bright, reflecting off polished marble and pristine glass. As they walked, a small group of women passed by. They were likely Tu Na's age, but they belonged to a completely different ecosystem. Their hair was flawlessly styled, their coats sharp and elegant, their leather shoes tapping lightly against the tile with effortless confidence. Tu Na stepped aside to let them pass. As she did, she accidentally caught her own reflection in one of the massive mirrors. For a long, agonizing moment, she stopped. She didn't see the woman who had single-handedly pulled a ruined harvest back from the brink of failure. She didn't see the woman whose steady hands had built the heavy wooden trellis in their garden to protect their crops. She only saw the stark, uncomfortable contrast. She stared at the way her faded, oversized jacket hung off her exhausted shoulders. She saw the uneven, sun-bleached strands of her hair framing a face lined by too many hours in the unforgiving summer wind. She looked down at her scuffed, practical walking boots next to the polished floor. Instinctively, her hand fluttered up. She tried uselessly to smooth down a stray piece of hair. Then she quickly pulled the edges of her jacket tighter around her chest, physically shrinking back from the glass. She took a step behind Alex, unconsciously trying to hide herself in his shadow. Standing just a few feet away, Alex watched this quiet, devastating moment. His heart sank heavy in his chest. Here was the hidden cost of their survival. They had spent years fighting for their land, counting every penny, pouring all their youth into the soil to ensure Henry would have a safe future. But in winning that war, Tu Na had lost sight of her own reflection. It is a dangerous thing when a woman begins to believe that her only value is what she can sacrifice for her family. If that cycle isn't broken, the invisible woman disappears completely. Alex knew, standing in that bright corridor, that he faced a quiet but critical choice. He could easily nod, agree with her practical nature, and keep the money safely hidden in their bank account. It was exactly what she wanted. It was the sensible, familiar farm logic they had lived by for half a decade. But true partnership requires more than just sharing the heavy lifting. Sometimes it requires one person to actively dismantle the cage the other has built around themselves. He realized that if he didn't force her to see her own beauty today, she might forget how to see it forever. Alex guided Tu Na to a quiet wooden bench near an indoor water feature. He gently pressed her by the shoulders to sit, handing her a bottle of water. "Rest here with Henry for a minute," he said softly, keeping his voice carefully casual. "My phone charger broke on the drive up. I'm going to run back to that electronics kiosk we passed. I'll be right back." Tu Na nodded, clearly exhausted, already turning her attention to unboxing Henry's new plastic truck to keep him occupied. Alex didn't go to the electronics kiosk. He turned around and walked purposefully back the way they came. The boutique was just as intimidating as before, smelling of expensive perfume and untouched perfection. Alex walked straight in, his heavy work boots stepping softly on the plush carpet. He bypassed the racks and went directly to the bright glass display. He pointed to the emerald green silk dress. As he stood at the sleek minimalist counter to pay, the contrast was almost beautifully absurd. He handed over his worn leather wallet with hands that were deeply scarred, the knuckles permanently darkened by years of soil and engine grease. The clerk carefully folded the delicate silk into soft tissue paper, placing it securely inside a thick, premium paper shopping bag with woven rope handles. When Alex took the bag, he held it with an immense protective care. It wasn't just fabric inside. He was carrying a deeply necessary intervention. He was carrying a physical permission slip for his wife to simply exist. Not as a worker, not as a mother, but as a woman who deserved to hold something beautiful. When Alex returned to the wooden bench, Tu Na was still sitting exactly where he had left her, softly laughing as Henry drove his new plastic dump truck across her knees. The harsh, sterile mall lights seemed to fade as Alex approached, carrying the elegant, heavy paper bag. He didn't make a loud declaration. He simply sat beside her and gently placed the beautiful package directly into her lap. The contrast was jarring. The pristine, high-end bag resting against her faded, dust-stained jeans. Tu Na looked down, recognizing the boutique's logo from the window. Instantly, the blood drained from her face. The panic was immediate and deeply ingrained. "Alex, no," she whispered, her voice tight with genuine distress as she tried to push the bag back toward him. "Take it back, please. The roof needs fixing before the rainy season. The fertilizer for next month. This is too much. It's a waste." Alex didn't argue about the budget. He didn't explain the price. Instead, he reached out and gently took both of her rough, deeply calloused hands in his own. He rubbed his thumb over the cracked skin of her palm, the hands that had built their simple wooden house, the hands that had pulled weeds in the blistering sun, the hands that held their son when he cried in the dark. "Tu Na, look at me," he said, his voice low and incredibly steady. "You spent the last 5 years making our home beautiful. You made sure we survived. But the farm is safe now. We are safe." He squeezed her hands gently. "Let me do this. Please." For a long moment, the busy mall around them completely vanished. Tu Na stared at his hands holding hers. The invisible armor she had worn for years finally, quietly, cracked. She didn't say thank you. She just exhaled a long, trembling breath and pulled the bag slightly closer to her chest. They didn't stay much longer after that. As they walked out of the sliding glass doors and into the warm, fading light of the evening, the artificial chill of the city was replaced by the familiar, comforting humidity of the coming night. They were heading home, back to the bamboo gate and the quiet porch. Tu Na didn't magically transform into a confident, carefree woman in that instant. She walked carefully, holding the delicate bag by its thick rope handles as if it were made of fragile glass, still a little nervous about what it represented. But as Henry skipped ahead to the truck, she stepped closer to Alex. She leaned her weight deeply against his arm, and a soft, hidden smile finally bloomed across her tired face. This is the reality of building a life together. The deepest healing doesn't happen overnight. It happens when someone loves you enough to patiently tear down the walls you built to survive. True partnership isn't just about sharing the heavy lifting in the fields. It is about actively protecting each other from the harshness of the world, especially the harshness we inflict upon ourselves. That emerald silk dress might stay safely folded in our wooden closet for a few weeks, waiting for the perfect occasion to be worn. But the invisible cage is broken. Because sometimes the most beautiful harvest a farm can ever yield is a husband remembering to cherish the woman who planted the seeds. Thank you for sharing this quiet moment with our family today. Have you or your partner ever struggled to accept something beautiful for yourselves after a long period of hardship? Please share your story with us in the comments. We read every single one. If this story brought a little warmth to your day, please gently press the like button and subscribe to our channel. We will see you back at the farm next week.